Yeah, let's go over the assignment for practice round 5. So question 1 was Erie ended up with a boatload of cash at the end of the round. Erie was also quite profitable. Could Erie have paid a dividend of sufficient amount to have ended up with an ROE equal to Chester's? If so, how much would the dividend have been? And I probably should get set up here and be on round 5. There we go. So, I hate when that happens. Let's go this route. Well, let me get that fixed. I'm going to pause for a second. So we got to take a look at a couple things, right? First, we need to know, right, how do we calculate that? So I want to know, could they have ended up with an ROE equal to Chester? So ROE and Chester's ROE is one of my variables, right? And ROE is simply equal to net income over equity, right? And so I'm kind of just putting those things in there, right? And so all we have to do then is ROE. And we go take a look at Chester's ROE, which we know from here is 19.7, right? Oops, wrong assignment there. ROE is equal to net income divided by equity, okay? Our net income isn't going to change as a result of paying out a dividend, but our equity will, okay? Dividends, and sometimes erroneously, people think that that has an effect on income. It does not, okay, because dividends are paid after all the taxes and everything are calculated, so it instead comes out of earnings or retained earnings, okay, and gets paid out to shareholders in that fashion. So our net income stays the same. We look at that on here, and our net income for Erie was $21,690,262, right? So now I've got my variables, right? So 19.7 is equal to my net income divided by, and what I want to know then is what my equity would have needed to have been. Okay, well, the magic of algebra, okay, is that we then manipulate these numbers a little bit. Okay, we can first we take x times both, and then we divide both sides by 19.7, and so we end up with 21 million divided by 0.197, 19.7, and we end up with what the equity would have had to come down to. Okay, so Erie's equity would have had to come down to 110,102,853. Its current equity was 120.9 million, roughly. So they would have had to have paid a dividend of about 10.8, okay, roughly about $10,800,000. Okay, which again, it kind of gets back to what do you do to improve things for your shareholders? Okay, one is you just increase their ROE by a couple percent, which they're happy about. But two, you also sent them $10.8 million in cash, which they may well be happy about. Okay, sometimes not, because they got to pay taxes on that. 2, what are the marginal variable costs of all the low-end products? Andrews and Digby each have 2, but ignore days. I said ignore days because it's showing its cost at 0 and 0. What do I mean when I ask about marginal costs? I didn't type that in, but I'll tell you what the answer would be for that. Okay, marginal costs are simply the cost for the last unit produced. When we say marginal anything, okay, when we talk about our marginal tax rate, well, that's the tax rate on the last dollar of income that we made, right? Because tax, when you say the highest tax rate is 35%, that doesn't mean that person pays 35% on every dollar that they make. No, on the first $15,000, they pay 0 taxes, and I may have the numbers kind of wrong, but in our progressive tax system, they pay 0 taxes on that first, like, 15,000. The next 20 or 30,000 might be taxed at 15%. The next 30 or 40,000 might be taxed at 28%. And so it's not until that $100,000th that they make, or somewhere around there, is actually taxed at 35, or whatever the case may be. Okay, in this game, they use a straight tax thing, and corporate taxes are often that way. So the corporate tax burden is often not progressive. It's just a straight tax burden of, I think the game uses 35%, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so back to the question, we're talking about marginal cost, marginal variable costs, and Able, we look at that, and the marginal variable costs are listed right here for us. So $4.53 on material, $5.56 on labor, so what's that, $10.09, right? $10.09. And you just go down each of those and you determine that. Really what I kind of wanted you to look at, and this would have been the 5th round, so teams would have had a reasonable opportunity to make progress on reducing those costs if they were so inclined to do that. And that's a huge difference. You know, you go from a low of under $10 to a high of over 14, okay? And so, you know, for each one that Acre's selling, it's making, you know, an extra $4.28. You know, if you sell 1 million of those, that's an extra $4,028,000. If you sell 2 million, that's an extra $8 million, right? And so, huge differences there, because you guys are selling, you know, by the 5th round, you are selling maybe a couple million of those, okay? And I will tell you that by the 5th round, this is not especially low. Okay, this is not especially low, so could have been perhaps even quite a bit lower. 3, wire fast material costs higher than cake. In the past, we've looked at MTBF, and that's certainly true, but we also have to look at the positioning of the product. And if we come down on what is it, the traditional, you know, fast is positioned way up here and cake back there. And if we go down and look at the bigger perceptual map, it's a little easier to see. So fast again is way up here and cake's way back here. Well, the materials that you're using to make a product back here in terms of the performance and the size just aren't as good. Okay, and so the materials then are quite a bit less expensive also. And you know, if you do the math, you'll see that the MTBF itself cannot account for the higher cost that fast is paying, right? For what is the marginal contribution margin for product Able? So we've got the marginal cost. So what's the marginal? So how much money was it making on that last item that it sold? It priced it at $22.50. Okay, we'll go look at that. But minus our marginal variable cost, which we get from up there. So on the last unit, it made $12.41. And if I divide that $12.41 by my $22.50, I'll find that I have a contribution margin, a marginal contribution margin. How's that? A 55.16%. That's getting pretty good. Okay, that is getting pretty good. You know, what I want to look at is what did it show as its contribution margin. And we come here to April, and it showed its contribution margin of 40%. Well, why is that? Okay, why is that? Well, the why is that a decent number of its products was made in the prior year. Able must have had some inventory carryover, and so had higher costs associated with the production of those, okay, of those items from the prior prior year, and they'll have some more, you know, next time, right? And you know, maybe this is round 5, maybe their price would go down and whatnot, so the contribution margin might not end up being that 55, but that's a pretty good sign, right, that its contribution margin is going to go up substantially, right, when we look at that, depending on what it does with its price, of course. If it kept the price the same, its contribution margin would go up substantially. So something to always kind of take a look at. I mean, it's nice to look at this contribution margin and see where we're at and what we did this last round, but take a look at where we might be going into that next round. All right, there you have it, a review of last week's assignment.